Hello, welcome to Museum Moments. I'm Ellie Gettinger. I'm the Education Director at Jewish Museum Milwaukee, and I am delighted to be with you today. This Monday is Labor Day, and Labor Day for us, for most people, is about barbecuing or getting out, or it's the start of fall. It means school is starting or has started in the case of most schools this year. And it's a little bit of this like closing. You're putting Memorial Day on one end and Labor Day on the other, and suddenly you can't wear white, or suddenly it's fall, suddenly it's football season. But Labor Day actually has kind of compelling history. It was formed in the 1890s as a national holiday, and it really was this kind of small nugget that was thrown to workers at a time of incredible unrest in national labor movements, when there wasn't much in the way of labor rights and labor and worker rights and the kinds of protections that we see now as being very helpful in ensuring your workforce is safe. That this is like one thing to say, hey, we're celebrating the common man, and it actually started out of New York and moved and became a whole national holiday. But I think today what I wanted to look at was some of the kind of celebrate some of the triumphs of labor history. And in doing that, we have a great opportunity to explore a labor pioneer in Milwaukee named Joseph Padway. So let's go on this journey together and learning a little bit about Mr. Padway and his role. But first, we're going to start with not Padway, but John Commons. John Commons is well known in Wisconsin as kind of the father of the Wisconsin idea. This was an idea that engaged research from University of Wisconsin-Madison in the act of governing in the state of Wisconsin. And he was an economist. Much of the work that he did then led to incredibly broad progressive reforms that then later became kind of national mandates as well. And Padway was also central to this as well. In this time period from about 1915 to 1930, a number of laws passed in Wisconsin, changing railroad corporation law, making unemployment compensation. I believe Wisconsin was the first state with unemployment law, minimum wage and hourly, how many hours you could work, anti-yellow dog contract law, which means your employer can't say, hey, you have to say if you're going to work here that you're not going to be a part of a union. You know, they can't have that mandated. And then mandatory jury trial in labor contempt cases, that you can't just say, oh, we'll convene this out of court and don't worry, management will take care of you. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And Padway really was part of a bunch of things. So let's meet the man, the myth, the legend. This is Joseph Padway. He was born in Leeds, England, and he's one of 9 children. And his family comes to the United States in 1905, and they come here, 1904, sorry, and they end up in Milwaukee because his father has been sent here to open an investment business. He goes to Marquette Law School, and by 1915, he is fully engaged in kind of labor issues and opens his own law firm and works with a number of different organizations throughout the city and the state to ensure fair labor laws. He becomes active in progressive politics in Wisconsin. At one point, he serves very briefly as a state assemblyman. He also then leaves that position to become a judge. And he kind of really, I think, feels like his life's work is about responding to labor issues and being part of those pieces. So he continues to drive legislation in kind of in more of an advisory role. He becomes the first chief counsel for the American Federation of Labor. And this puts him in a national light, that instead of just being in Wisconsin, he is now representing one of the 2 largest unions at that point in the United States, and he is representing them in front of Congress. He is representing them on, kind of the global stage. And he is known for being, a lawyer's lawyer. He's someone who can communicate with everybody. He's someone who can communicate his issues clearly. And he's someone who engenders a lot of respect, both from those who know and love him, and those who are really opposed to his contentions. This is him in front of the Senate Labor Committee, and here he is testifying. Actually, he's picking at the Wagner Act, and the Wagner Act established certain protections for workers, and it establishes the National Labor Review Board. And he's here in 1939 because he feels that the Wagner Act has unfairly promoted the Congress of International Union, the Congress of Industrial Unions, the CIO, and that he, as the rep of the AFL, needs to have a little bit more clout. And he actually calls the CIO the NLRB's pet baby. So he was, he was good at oratory. He was good at making his point known. And he also was good at getting people to come to his side. He dies famously in 1947. And he dies in 1947 while actually, he has a stroke in the middle of giving a speech at the AFL's convention. And it's this, he's giving this incredible speech and he has a stroke, and it's such a good speech that the 700 people present don't even recognize the fact that he is, slurring or he's having challenges at this point. They just keep going with him. And the big fight that he is seeing at this point is the TaftHartley Act. This is 1947. This is immediately after World War II. And in that kind of post-World War II shift towards anti-communism, there are a number of things that are introduced in the Taft-Hartley Act, many of them which kind of pick at some of the protections that were provided by that earlier Wagner Act that he had, yes, opposed, but also supported in some ways. And this is what he says as he's, thinking about this. And he actually had been told by his doctor, you need to slow down, you have stomach ulcers. He was a big guy. He was, and people describe him as being larger than life again and again and again. And he says, I can't quit now. It would be like deserting a ship in danger. This thing is bigger than I am. It's not the money I want or more glory. In the face of attack being made upon labor through the Taft-Hartley Act, I must see this through to the end. I get a kick out of doing it like a painter who gets a thrill out of completing a fine painting. And at this point, he had actually been representing a miner who had a case that went up opposing the Taft-Hartley Act and some of its provisions all the way to the Supreme Court. National known status. He is a well-known lawyer, and he in San Francisco, or in Palo Alto, actually, he is stricken. He is taken back to his hotel room, and then he dies at Stanford Hospital. And it's, a big to-do. This is in the middle of the AFL's convention. So there are all of these questions about how to respond and what they should do. And they actually take a break. And this gives you a sense of, from a Wisconsin standpoint, how prominent he was. This is 2 weeks in a row of the Wisconsin Jewish Chronicle. October 10th, right after he died, where you have both a Joseph A. Padway dies suddenly at AFL convention, and then an above the fold tribute written by Cecil Rhodes, the longtime editor of the Wisconsin Jewish Chronicle. And the next week, you have a statement about his funeral. Thousands paid tribute to Joseph Padway at services here and in San Francisco. So they did a service for him at the AFL convention. And here is how that service is described. It says, the San Francisco services were held on Friday, October 10th in the auditorium where the AFL convention was in session. So they actually paused the convention for this funeral. It was particularly impressive. When the body was brought into the hall, the convention was temporarily adjourned to pay last respect to the indomitable fighter who literally died on his feet while addressing delegates the previous Wednesday. Jan Pierce, the Metropolitan Opera star, chanted El Maleh Rachamim, assisted by a choir. President William Green of the AFL delivered the eulogy, praising Mr. Padway's service as counsel. We have lost a great friend, he declared, and have suffered an irreparable loss. And he later, so about 3,700 people paid tribute. They actually walked in front of his body as it was held in state. And then later they had a funeral in Milwaukee with an estimated crowd of 1,500 people, 1,480 people. filled the entire auditorium of Emmanuel B'nai Jeshurun. And Joseph Barron, who was the rabbi there, commented, he said, he was strong, he was adamant, he was courageous and persistent in the battle for justice and emancipation. He knew the meaning of pain and dared, in spite of strain, oblivious to personal danger, to carry the self-sacrificing struggle for the common man, to do his duty and to serve beyond the call of duty. This is noteworthy today as we observe in the world, and I find this part of Barron's speech to be really reflective of a moment that we're having right now. When we observe in the world about us a growing ideological fanaticism, a sharpening bitterness between those who represent different views, and an interesting collapse of personal dignity and human solidarity, even in the highest echelons of the arenas of political power, political and social controversy. Would that the sweetness and the gentleness and the fair play of Joseph Padway serve as an example in human relations everywhere, for therein is the soul of democracy, therein lies the hope of the world. Mr. Rhodes eulogized him as saying, Joseph Padway was probably the most colorful Jewish figure in local history. He was a big man in every respect. His passing leaves a void in the minds and hearts of his many friends. And today, it has been a pleasure to talk about Joseph Padway and his work. And I hope this gives you a sense of one person in the fight for labor history and recognizing how many millions of others it took and how many different types of people from all sorts of different backgrounds who came together to enact fair labor laws in our country. And it's something that we can continue to strive to do. Thanks for sharing this museum moment with me. I'll be back next week. We're going to be talking about Mildred Fish Harnack. And it actually comes back to the Wisconsin idea again. So have a great day.